in presence and in power, and may we know your love for us, your care for us, and learn from you what you have to speak to us tonight. In your name, amen.
Go ahead and stand. We're going to sing a song that you know and a song that you might not know that we sang in South Africa. So here we go.
Join you in your suffering, and I'll join you when you
this is a song that we did many times in South Africa, and I just really thought it was very beautiful. So we wanted to share that with you.
Thanks, girls. Good job. You can be seated. The way we're going to walk through this tonight is each of us is going to take a portion of our trip and just kind of give you some of the details of what we actually did. We're going to try to go through it in chronological order as much as we can, although some things overlap, but that's okay. So we'll give you some of that explanation of kind of what we did, and then each of us is going to share a little bit about how the trip impacted us personally, some of the things we took away from it, and how we want to see it, hope to see it impact our lives going into the future. There's 10 of us here tonight. 3 we're not able to make it tonight, so DJ and Donnie Kerr and Neva McMullen are also part of the team that you won't be able to hear from tonight, but the majority of the team is here tonight. So I'm going to begin, and then each person, you know when you're going to come up, so just come on up and share from up here, and then have a seat when you're done, and we'll all be up here. And then we'll take Q&A at the end. We'll give you 5 minutes for Q&A, so start planning we'll see. Start planning your questions now. So we left for South Africa on October 3rd. It was a Thursday morning, early from the church, and we flew out of Redmond, which was such a blessing. Flew to Seattle and had a little bit of a layover in Seattle, and we had a 11-hour flight. Is that right? 11 first, right? Or 9 first? 9. Okay, so we had a 9-hour flight from Seattle to London, and we landed in London at 7 a.m. on Friday morning, which put us in our body time at 10 p.m. So it was 10 p.m. to us. It was bright and early in London on Friday morning, and we had 12 hours to kill in London. And part of that was purposeful, to help us get prepared to sleep on the next flight, and also to get us, what's the word I'm looking for? Help to get us acclimated to the time zone that we would be in South Africa. So we were able to hop on the tube, the subway. Did I say it correctly? Andrew, you wrote the tube. And we took about a 45-minute subway ride down to Piccadilly Circus, and we walked around. We walked 8.5 miles or so, give or take, over those 12 hours. And we got to take our picture. If you go back there, we took our picture with Nelson Mandela there on the right. There's a statue of Nelson Mandela down by Westminster Abbey. And so it was fun. That was kind of a fun touristy thing that we got to do on the way. And it was super helpful because we were all exhausted by the time we got on our plane for Johannesburg. And I was able to sleep. I had a really good sleep that night. I think most of us did as well. So then we took a 9-hour flight from London south to Johannesburg and landed in Johannesburg about 7 the next morning, on Saturday morning. Yeah, that was about mile 7 right there on the left-hand side, and we were having a conversation about, okay, do we want to walk 2 more miles before we get back on the tube, or do we want to just get back on the tube? And we chose the tube. Tube? Really? Okay, that's how you say it, tube. Okay, so at 7 the next morning, on Saturday morning, we arrived in Johannesburg, and we were met at the airport by some of our favorite people. You see Megan there in the front, and Scott somewhere, and Layla somewhere too. And then we got to have a little bit of breakfast in the airport, and Scott had to run an errand in Johannesburg, and then we drove for about 2 hours till we got to Potchefstroom. And so Potchefstroom is about an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours southwest of Johannesburg, and that's where the base is. So as soon as we got there, we unloaded and found our rooms, and then we went and did a CrossFit workout. And that's me after the workout. So that was fun. Scott just kind of was basically his idea was like, let's get you guys moving. And we were all, can we move towards a bed? And he's like, no, we're going to keep you awake until it's time to go to bed tonight. So we did a CrossFit workout, had some lunch. And then literally the first time we got in the van, we had a flat tire. And we got to this service station just to check the tire, and these guys were like, you are not leaving until we change that tire. And they wouldn't let us touch anything, and they ended up changing the tire for us and getting us all aired up and out of there. So that was Saturday. Then we went and had dinner at the Graham's house. Sunday in the morning, by the way, Pepper and Jenny did a fantastic job doing our food. This was a trip where we basically had to take care of our own food. We were on a base there in Potchefstroom. There's a base, which is, I don't know how many acres it is. Did Scott ever say how many acres it was? So it's like this compound with a bunch of different buildings. And the time that we were there was about 200 extra people there as well. So it's this little base with all these kind of motel-style rooms and 3 or 4, I think 3 different kitchens. And basically all these 20-something-year-olds are there for different purposes. There was a team from Kona, Hawaii, who was there doing a leadership training for several months. And then there was a group of young people from the States, from South Africa and elsewhere who were doing a Bible school. So that's about 200 people. Then you add about 150 of the permanent staff members there who are part of the base there. The name of the ministry in South Africa, you hear it called YWAM quite a bit, but they actually call it Fire and Fragrance. So when we talked about it, it was always Fire and Fragrance, which is a part of YWAM, but not the only part of YWAM. There's lots of different parts of YWAM. The part that Scott and Megan are part of is Fire and Fragrance. And then we did get plenty of coffee. There were 3 really cool coffee shops, very close. Sunday morning, we went to church at Shofar Christian Church, which has been Scott and Megan's church for the 5 years that they've been there in Potchefstroom. And I'm even saying the name wrong. It's actually Potchefstroom. Can everybody say that? Potchefstroom. Yeah, so they call it Potch for short. On Sunday night, we asked Scott basically to give us a cultural experience. And he's an American. He and Megan are Americans in South Africa. So he's like, okay, I'm going to take you to the most Afrikaans restaurant I can think of. And Afrikaners are, Hallie's going to talk about this a little bit later, but they're kind of the descendants of the Dutch, who were the first white settlers, first European settlers in South Africa. So he took us to this place called Kooperatie, which is basically you can see the spijskaart or the menu there on the right-hand side, and everything was in Afrikaans, the language of Afrikaans. And so if you didn't have like a Google Translate thing, you had to ask the waiter. We had a gal with us who's Scott and Megan's roommate named Hannah, who's an amazing gal, and she speaks German, Zulu, English, not American, English, and Afrikaans. So she was able to interpret what the menu said there. And the food was pretty amazing. We could get a steak dinner for basically $8 American, full-on steak dinner that would fill your belly up. So that was kind of a fun experience. The what do you call them? Waiters and waitresses didn't quite know what to do with us, so they were talking to us in Afrikaans for like a few minutes before we're like, hey, we don't speak Afrikaans. Like, we speaking? And they're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll speak in English. So that was a fun experience. And then, that was kind of our weekend of getting there and kind of getting acclimated and getting settled into the week. And now I'll hand it over to Emma, who's going to share a little bit about the prayer sets.
It's my large water bottle. Okay, on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday mornings, we started our days out by going to what they called prayer set. So we went to Shofar, the church that you saw in the last few slides, and it's pretty much just like, how many people? 175? A lot of people packed into this room, and we all got to pray with song, and then they let us in worship or prayer sets. So we prayed for different things. One day we prayed for Bible translation in Africa. One day we prayed for South Africa specifically. And it was a really amazing time to start our days out with an hour and a half of praying and being with the Lord and with his community. And that was, I'll talk about it later, but that was definitely one of the most impactful things for me. It was amazing. So that was the first thing we started our days out with. Here's us after the prayer sets. Usually a lot of us were crying afterwards. It was a great time. It was awesome. Do we have any more pictures of that, or is it just those 3? 250 people there, not 150. Okay, next is Emily talking about the high school. Do you want me to sit over there if I'm second?
Okay, I didn't know what pictures to send. I didn't take very many photos, so I have no idea what's on the screen, but that's okay. So we went to the high school, and we met Sarah before we went to the high school, and she was going to tell us what we were going to do and where we're going and stuff, and she's one of my favorite people I met there. She's awesome, and she's part of Fire and Fragrance, and we went to the Verdi's High School. It has a really long name, much longer than what I said, but that's what they call it, and it's just a mixed school, and we went there to go and share our testimonies as kids. Not the adults, but and really loved it. That's me and Hallie, and Donnie again. And so usually they have like 20 people there, or 20 to 50. And this time I think they had over 70 because they were really excited to meet like Americans. And so it was really awesome, and they loved hearing our testimonies, and they were really good listeners. Like, I was impressed because I had never seen people just like so intently listening, and it was really awesome. And then we did sing a song before our testimonies. We sang Our God is an Awesome God, and it was really fun. And then we said something interesting about ourselves. And then after that, we prayed over them, and we got into some groups and just prayed over some of the girls, and some of them went through some really hard things recently, and by the end, I'm pretty sure we all had tears in our eyes, and it was really awesome, and they loved us, and we loved them. And I don't know who's next. So, my dad.
So YWAM is a youth with a mission, Fire and Fragrance. And one thing that they like to do is evangelize. They take things in the Christian walk, and then they make a school out of it, and then people come and go through this school on whatever topic they have. They have schools for all kinds of things. And this one, evangelism tactic that they have is through telling stories. And so we got to experience a piece of that, and it was really good. So I'm going to share the story with you. This is the first story that they have. In the beginning, the uncreated God created the seen and unseen things. He created the earth, the plants, the animals, the trees, and he created man. All the other things he made by speaking them into existence. But man, he took a lump of clay and he breathed life into the man. And he said to enjoy the garden. In the garden, there were two trees. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. In the unseen things that God made, the tree of knowledge and the tree of good and evil, he told Adam to not eat of the tree of good and evil, for in that day, if you eat of it, you will surely die. And God saw that man was alone and said that it is not good for man to be alone. So he put Adam to a deep sleep, took of his rib, and created a woman, and Adam named the woman Eve. And Adam and Eve were in the garden, and they were naked, and they were not ashamed. So they told that story to us 2 times, and then they asked us to share that story back. And he said, what we're looking for is about 60% retention on the details of that story. Then they shared the story back to us and asked questions like, tell us something you liked. Tell us something you didn't like, something that set you in tension in the story. Tell us something about God in the story. So we talked about that, and then they shared the story with us again. And we shared the story back with them. And they said if you go through that process, you will get about 90% retention. And they can take those stories to people that have an oral language that's not a written, oral language, and share those stories. And YWAM has put together, I think, 37 stories. And if all 37 stories are shared that way, they have found that people can retain 90% of the information with all of those stories. And it has become such a delightful thing. Like they love it. They love going out and sharing the stories and evangelizing that way. So we had a good time. We did that in Scott and Megan's house, and 2 of the leaders came and spent some time with us sharing those stories.
I get to talk again. All right, so I'm sharing about really the vision of why Scott and Megan are there, and a lot of this has to do with their emphasis on fitness and CrossFit. So on Sunday afternoon, the second day that we were there, Scott took us on a tour of the base and showed us everything that was going on there and told us about how kind of everything came to be. They started as a group of about 25, all from Kona, Hawaii, from the YWAM base there, and went and planted this base. And they got there in December of 2019, right before COVID hit. So they had a lot of time to really connect as a team as they were in lockdown. And the first thing that they did, and this is one of Fire and Fragrance's main focuses, the first thing that they did was they built a prayer room. And at first it was just a little small room in this kind of office complex upstairs. And the whole team worked on it, lugging cinder blocks up and down the stairs and doing destruction and construction. And Scott was kind of in charge of that the whole time. But Fire and Fragrance starts with prayer and worship. That's where they begin. They want to stir the passions of fire for Christ and for the gospel, and then from that be the fragrance of Christ in the world. So they always start with prayer and worship. That's why we did prayer sets every weekday morning. It's required that staff be at these prayer sets and be part of that. So they built a prayer room, and he showed us that, and it's expanded from what it originally was. It's this huge room upstairs in this office complex, but it was too small for the 300 or so people that were there while we were there, so that's why we did our prayer sets at a church. Then he gave us a tour of the office as well, and then Scott and Megan really have this love for fitness and using the fitness as an inroad for the gospel wherever they're at. And so when they were in Hawaii, they were part of this program called RTC, or Respect the Corners, which was a CrossFit type of ministry. And their hope was to train up coaches who would be certified CrossFit coaches who would go into the nations. Because Morocco is a closed nation to missionaries, but they will accept you if you're a CrossFit coach and you want to start a gym there. You can go in, start a gym as a business, and begin to build relationships and do discipleship in the context of that. So in South Africa, they really have this heart for reaching their community through the CrossFit gym. And so they started with a container that was out on somebody's farm that they would use, and that's the container right there that had CrossFit equipment in it, and they would do workouts there. And then they built a trailer. I don't know if we have a picture of the trailer, but they built a mobile trailer that they would take right into the middle of one of the kind of grassy areas near the university, and they would set up a mobile CrossFit gym and just invite students to come be a part of that. And they built a lot of relationships. And through the CrossFit, they're able to evangelize and talk about Jesus. Basically, as they break people down physically, they also see that spiritual walls come down too, and conversational, relational walls. And so they prayed and prayed and prayed, and what we got to see was 5 years of vision coming to fruition, because God opened up this space for them now that they are a permanent site right there on the beautiful corner, really close to the university. And you can see this is the inside of their gym. There were pictures earlier of the outside of the gym that they've built, and this is a certified CrossFit affiliate gym that they run there in Potchefstroom, and they have classes all throughout the week. They have members who have come to be part of Fire and Fragrance just to be part of this gym and to coach, and many of those coaches they're training up to send out into the nations. And so as you pray for them, just pray that God would continue increasing that vision. They're trying to finish their gym. They need about $30,000 more to do that, and then it'll be what they originally envisioned. And it's really cool to watch them, because as they pray, God meets them, God provides for them, and God continues to open doors for what they want to do. Around the corner, about a block and a half, I don't know if we have pictures of it, but there's a bar that's been there. It's called Bourbon Street, and it's been there for decades. And it's kind of one of the seedy bars that is part of the nightlife for the university crowd, and students would go there and do things that you do at bars that we probably shouldn't talk about. That bar is shut down, and the owner of it wants to sell it to Fire and Fragrance. And so they're really hoping that God, and they're in contract, but they're hoping that God would just push this through and allow them to do that, because it's this space right there in the middle of one of the kind of the most difficult places to reach, right next to the university. And so we got to see that as well. And it was really just neat to see the vision coming to fruition, how they've been part of it, and our prayers have been part of it, and our support has been part of it as well. So, and Alicia.
I think I only have 2 slides. So one afternoon, only 3 of us went. Everyone else chose to go work out. But Pepper, myself, and Jane went to Hope Again. It's a rehab center for people struggling with addiction and mental health issues. And at least on the women's side, there was as young as 15 years old up to 60 plus, I would say. And so Pepper went with the men, and so he can tell you what happened over there better than I can just repeating his words. But there was a whole group of us, like 20, I think, women from the base, besides myself and Jane, that were there. And with the women's side, we went in and we talked as a group and said some different things, and then we split up into smaller groups and did these questions, and then after that we came back together for a story, and just hearing these women talk about Jesus in a different way than I would have ever thought was really cool. I can tell you more about that later. There was these really big, annoying peacocks there, and there's just tons of them, and they were everywhere, and they're just really loud and annoying. And then after the story, we gathered back together, and one of the things, I forget what they call it, they have a name for it, but it's like creative, something about design. What? Original design, there we go. And so what we did is we went around and we prayed for each lady, and then we wrote down words that God gave us for that person. And they even did one for me the first time meeting me, and I definitely cried. There's a lot of crying on this trip. Just like the words that they described me were so sweet. And then we had to wrap up and go. But yeah, it was a great time to just meet these women, hear some of their stories, and see God in a different way than I've seen him before. Sawyer.
All right, so I never sent any pictures in, but I'm going to talk about the ministry night that we did, which was on the Tuesday of our trip. We got a really good picture of the sunset before with all of us there. But I was thinking that because it was on Tuesday night, which is when the youth group here is, that's kind of how I'm relating to it in my mind. It wasn't really a youth group because it was more mature adults that didn't need games to have Jesus. But there was worship before, and some stuff happened there, but and it was just a lot of people getting in contact with the Holy Spirit. But I don't think that I'm going to talk about that a lot because I'm not the most sure of it. But what I will talk about is a lot of you guys might have heard about Gabe, who was a super important leader in the ministry night and a bit of the church too, right? Right. And like it kind of, his ministry night started with like 3 people in college really, and then it was just them praying for a bit and listening to music on a phone is what he said, I think, which is like wild. And then it turned into this huge thing. Do we have any inside? Yeah, there were a lot of people there. I never got a number of that. But there was a lot of people there, and they got to, that message that Gabe gave us was really important, I think, for our mission team specifically. Like, God definitely planned that out ahead, that the week that we would be there, he'd talk about the parable of the talents, which I had to find that today, and it took me a minute. But in Matthew 25, it talks about the parable of the talents, which was a master gave his servants 5 talents, 3 talents, or 2 and 1 talents, I think. And then the man with 5 talents doubled it, and the man with 2 doubled it, but the man with 1 just buried it and then gave it back to him because he thought he was a strict leader. And that master is definitely God. That's what that's supposed to represent. And in that verse, in the second verse, I think that'd be 15, but I could be wrong. It talks about, it says he gave the talents to each of the servants, like based on what he knew of them, really. And I think that's really important to our team because God gave us all this opportunity to go to Africa, and for the rest of our lives, he's going to give us opportunities. And all we need to do is just make the most of that opportunity to grow in him and try to show others. Like, God gave us a lot of talents, right, in this trip to going to Africa, a lot of opportunities that we can grow in him, and we got to meet a lot of people, like you're going to hear more, and like you've already heard, we got to do a lot of that. And I think Gabe's message just really fit with our group perfectly because about how we can, God's given us that opportunity, and we need to make the most of it. And I think that's kind of a main takeaway of mine about trying to listen to God and know what he wants me to do, because there were other people there, like Scott. God might not have the plan for us to go and live in South Africa like Scott and Megan and Layla, but he definitely has other plans for us. Maybe that is his plan, and this was just a door that he opened to some of us. Maybe that's what he wants us to do. Or he wants us to go to another place like Kona, Hawaii, and I don't know if that's God's plan for any of our group. I don't think that's what God was telling me. But I got to learn, it was just a great learning experience on how I don't have to do everything that all the other people around me were doing. And I think that was really powerful of what Gabe talked about. I do not know who's next.
Hello, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of South Africa and what we were walking into, and then the townships, and hopefully, you'll see some pictures. So Dad summarized the history of South Africa way better than I can, so I'm going to read what he wrote. In the 1600s, Cape Town, South Africa, became an outpost for the Dutch West Indies Company, from where the Dutch slowly settled South Africa, along with the English and the native tribes moving down from the north. Those of Dutch descent became known as Afrikaners, and in 1948, the Afrikaans Nationalist Party came into power and instituted apartheid, an Afrikaans word meaning apartness, which was abolished in 1994 when Nelson Mandela became president. Even though South Africa is about 90% Black, Native African, and about 10% of European descent, whites retained power for most of South Africa's history until 1994, including both political and economic power. And so that is what we walked into with the townships. Black people were not allowed to live in towns and cities where there were white people, which was quite heartbreaking to see because most of the houses that you saw along the road were they were just sort of tin shacks, oftentimes with bricks or rocks on top to keep the roofs on. And apartheid was only abolished 30 years ago, so those wounds have not healed yet. And so most Black people, they work in town, and then they live outside of town, in the townships. But there's a lady in one of the townships who is running a church. I believe her name was Dione. Am I right on that? I think so. And she runs a church in a township, and then she does township ministries to a lot of other different townships around Potchefstroom. And we got the privilege of helping her in that ministry for an afternoon. We got to share a Bible story with the kids, do some singing and dancing with them, and then we got to give them a meal, which was really cool. And there was a lot of joy amidst the suffering and the poverty. And I didn't realize until after we had finished giving them their meals that might be the only meal they get this week, those kids. And so the ministry they're doing with the townships is just really important and really powerful and very impactful. And next is Jane.
So we got to meet with the two core worship leaders, Davis and Cooper, and we got to talk about how they do worship, and we got to ask them questions, and they asked us questions, and we really just talked a lot about what worship is to us as Christians, and how we use it to glorify God, and as a worship leader, how we are guardians of distractions in the church, and the way I picture of it is we are kind of a bridge to take the people's glory and give it up to God. And it was really a cool experience to meet these two people. They have awesome characters, and I was really, just really encouraged about them, so it was really short, but next is Jenny.
So we did some evangelism, and we didn't just go out and evangelize, we were taught, which Eric already told you some about. And one of the lovely ladies, I don't know if we had a picture of Sarah, but anyway, her name was Sarah, and she was just the cutest, sweetest little girl, woman who helped us learn there she is, learn what we were going to do. So, and we did, so on this particular day, we went, we spent some time by the pool on the compound, I guess, and she taught us basically what we're going to do, because we were just like, okay, so how do you evangelize? I mean, we know in the U.S. it's not very welcome, evangelists are not, very welcome, but in South Africa, I think it's fairly common, honestly. And so she said, we're just going to go in and we're going to talk to people. And we were going into a mall, and it was a mall just like any mall that you've been to in a big city. And so what we did was she gave us some training on what to do, and we asked, I think, a lot of clarifying questions just because we were kind of, I think, in awe of it. And then we went to the mall, and we broke up into groups, and we got to evangelize. And Sawyer and I were with Sarah. She was in our group, so she did most of it. We kind of watched, but we also participated in our first group, or the first person we met was a woman who had a booth in the middle aisle of the mall, and I can't remember what she was selling, but she was selling something, and she just was sitting there. And so we went, and Sarah said, hey, can we talk to you? How are you doing? And just kind of chatted with her, and then she asked her if she knew God, and she did. And everybody there, it's a lot like the U.S. Everybody there would claim to be a Christian. Everyone, like every person we talked to that day, claimed to know Jesus and claimed to be a Christian. But that didn't stop us. We didn't go, oh, okay, that's great, and move on. We continued that conversation and asked clarifying questions, and she just asked about their life and about struggles and about anything that any healing that they need in their family. And then we would pray with each one. And we met with 3 groups. One was the one lady, and then the second was like a group of sisters, and one was really, really, really talkative, and the other one was not. And they were just really interesting people, but they were so receptive to us. And the third group that we met was, it started out with this really kind of tall Afrikaans man, a white man, who was waiting. He was sitting in the middle of the aisle, and he was just waiting. And so we stopped and we talked to him, and he, of course, was a Christian, and so we talked about, Jesus and the gospel. And then 2 other ladies came up, and he was obviously waiting for them. So anyway, we had a conversation with the 3 of them also, and it was really encouraging to me to kind of see her in action and be able to be inspired to talk to people more boldly about Jesus. So anyway, Sarah was amazing. and a gift to us. And then the other one was Paulo, and he was the one who helped us when we went out to the township, and he was amazing also. So, Pepper, you're up.
Thank you. By this time, it is Thursday on the chronological scale here. We're going to do a hospital visit. And I'd like to paint a picture for you just really quickly about Potchefstroom. So there's about 50,000 people that live in a first world town. And there are about 170,000 people outside of this town that live in what you've seen as the townships. And it is right across the tracks, right across the street. It is like they come wandering in to go to work, the people that live in the townships, and it is like influx, as you could imagine, a town about the size of Redmond, and people coming from like out towards Sisters and out towards Prineville, all walking in and then walking out in the evenings. It's a little crazy. I say this because we did a hospital visit, and the hospital is obviously going to, it's a state hospital, and it's going to get an influx of anyone who's sick in the area. And state funding is, as you would imagine, a first world, third world operation would go. Again, Sarah strikes again in this thing. She's running our hospital visit, and yeah, really a lovely woman that every facet of the Fire and Fragrance ministry, she was right up front with that, and kind of taking us around to give us a taste of what all YWAM or Fire and Fragrance does there. And so we end up headed down on a Thursday, already a busy week, and we go into the hospital. These are actually pretty good shots of the hospital. We go through security off the street, and it is definitely in that blended, you're right across the street from the townships type idea. There's a lot of trash in the streets. So it's that, first world, third world mix. And so we go through security, and I'm kind of struck by how there's really nobody on the first floor of the hospital. I've done some pre-hospital and hospital stuff, and it wasn't horrible as far as unclean on the first floor, but as we go into this hospital, it's definitely a probably 60s, 70s built hospital, and not really well kept, so they don't have super high standards there. As the women's and men's group split into a women's ward and men's ward to go pray for people, I think we encountered maybe 2 staff, and they were well overworked, you could tell. But we immediately started going into rooms, kind of left on our own, really, to go into rooms and pray for people. And I can't really speak too much of the women's ward, but the men's ward, we just started dropping in. We passed by, we prayed for a man who had had surgery recently. He was very receptive, very kind. I didn't run into anyone there that wasn't kind to us. But we walked by, it was Raphael. I'm sure that was his name. We walked by his room, and I noticed he was asleep, and we didn't disturb him at that point. But he had an IV pole and had a pint of blood going IV, and I was struck by someone knowing that that's a pretty serious biz if you're going to get a pint of blood for any reason. And I was wondering what was going on with him. We went on and prayed for others. Some people had friends in with them, and but most were fairly well alone in kind of an unkept hospital. And we were invited to pray with them. People very receptive for prayers, a sip of water, whatever it was, and ran into some of the ladies on the backside of coming together with that. And then Mike and I and DJ went in to pray with Raphael on the way out. And I was struck by this because his very Dutch employer, a lady and her friend, were there just hanging out with him, and he was awake at that point. I'm certain that Raphael was very septic. I didn't talk to anybody to find out exactly what was going on with him, but he was near death. And his employer had gone in there to be with him, and we were invited to pray with him, and he accepted that very well. And she was expressing how he was her gardener, and he was at one point a very strapping man and was very able, and now was, quite sick in bed. I'm not sure what his ailment was originally, but he looked like he could pass at any time. We prayed fervently for him, as we did for others, but it just struck me, one, the relationship he had with his employer, and two, just how we may have been placed there for those things. I couldn't do anything about the hospital conditions. I couldn't do anything about his ailment, but God can. And I know that he took us there for those reasons. Having Sarah lead us around for evangelism, for hospital visits, for all of the things that they did, the high school testimonies, it was very impactful on this group, and this group did amazing with cohesion and listening and being led by the Spirit. That's what I have. Alicia.
Back to me. All right, so every evening we met and we debriefed the day. So a lot of these things, some of them we're doing like 3 of them in one day. So it wasn't like just every day was one thing. We did prayer sets, and then we would go and do workouts, and then we'd go and do something else. And so there's always something going on. We would meet at the Grams for supper. That was catered by a local lady, and it was amazing. The food was beyond great. And so we would meet together, and then we would sit around and we would take time to just pause and write down some stuff in our journals to come back to as we have gone on the plane and come back here, just to make sure that we don't forget some of those things that God was teaching us along the way. So we all, or most of us, were journaling every night, and so we'd meet at this Scott and Megan's house. You can go to another slide. There's more pictures. So we just all would hang out depending on what muscles were sore or how tired we were, but depending on which couch or whatever we would lay on. Eric was snoring one day, and the dog got scared and woke up. But the debriefs were very impactful, especially for me, and I'll talk about that more later. But it was just a great time. Like, there's so many different things that we got to do, as you've seen, and a lot of these things the group up here has done for the first time. People were on a plane for the first time. People were out of the country for the first time. We were in a different spiritual culture. We went to different churches. There were so many things for us to discuss and for us to just kind of think about and talk through, and what does the Bible say about that? And so this was a time that we really spent just talking about how we're doing, what God is teaching us, and what do we do with all this? So that was what we did with debriefs. Other way, there you go. On the last day we went on a safari. We were told by Linda Sharp that you can't go to Africa and not go on a safari, so we did. So we were in this big old vehicle, and we just went around, and we had a driver who would stop and let us point out different animals, and we saw all the big 5 except for a leopard. So we saw a lot of great animals. It was hot, very hot that day. There's lions in the back of that on the rock. They're hiding because it was so hot. But right before we went to the lions, the guy went speeding down the road, and we're like, usually just kind of meandering down. And then we got there. He's like, sorry for the Ferrari safari, but we had to get to the lions. And we're like, best thing ever, right? Uh-oh, it's dying. Maybe the plug's not working. All right. Well, I think it's on. Okay, so we went on the safari. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people were very tired. It was like a 2.5-hour drive up there, And then we were sitting in this bus after all of this activity. So we did the 3-hour tour, and we came back. Thank you. Thank you. Nobody got that when I said that. I was like, I hope we get back from this 3-hour tour, and nobody here got it. All right, so there's just a lot of pictures. We round the corner, and there was an elephant there. So there's just a lot of really cool things. We saw zebras, elephants, zebras, giraffes. We saw a baby giraffe. On the way back, we stopped and got some food. That was the food that I ate. I was really hungry. I didn't, but I ate at least part of all of it. I ate most of it, though. But it was just like, how the breakfast is like 40 rand, so that's like $2 for that breakfast up there. I think we paid like $8 probably for that plate, or $10. So the food was just great. And then this lady, was one of our waiters, and she was also pregnant, and she was the same weeks along as Emma. And so Emma and Megan prayed for her before we left. All right. Then we went to an Anglican church. So the first Sunday we went to Shofar, which is where the Grahams had been going. And now they're kind of deciding what church they want to go to now that they're not elders at the other church. And so we went to this Anglican church, and Donnie got to play the organ afterwards, which is pretty cool to hear. There was, Dean, you wouldn't have to flip the lights to get everybody in because everyone was already quiet and in the church at the beginning. But it was just a beautiful, beautiful church. And they said, has anybody have a birthday this week? We'll do a birthday blessing. And Mike had a birthday the next day, so they prayed for him and gave him a birthday blessing while we were there. And then we just took a lot of we took a lot of group shots because we hadn't really taken a lot of pictures of ourselves, so we're looking pretty, took some pictures with the brick wall, you know. And I also just included a lot of random stuff in here coming up. This is a lot of hanging out at the Grahams time when we got there during free time, so we were just taking up the time to talk about what's going on, talk about just random things, ask the Grahams how they're doing. So it was just a time to just reconnect and be with these people that we've known for a really long time. And it was just a really sweet time with the team and with each other. And Pepper barbecued us some good meat the one night, and it was amazing. Then more pictures of food. This is the last day we went to Rockabama's. That chocolate shake was mine. It was amazing. Yeah, Mr. Muscles, Eric Rice. We got to choose our own name for our order. So we had to order on paper and then choose our name. He was Mr. Muscles. These are just some of the coffee shops that we went to. And then Pepper made us breakfast every morning, and it was amazing. Super good. And I said on the last day I'm super sad because now I have to make my own breakfast again. So Donnie, he was just hanging out when I went to go give him the mop on the last day when we were cleaning up. So that was the guys' room, and that was our girls' room, all 7 of us in one bathroom. And that was the door that if you didn't go through the gate, you went through the man door. So they don't use wood because it's so expensive there. So all of their doors are really beautiful. And then that's us being dropped off at the airport. That's Hannah with Jenny and Megan, and she's their roommate that we've talked about. So this is us starting to travel home. All the airports, all the stretching. And then it was Mike's birthday, and this waiter that we had at the Seattle airport gave us cake, and it was amazing. So that was pretty great. And then we saw everyone again, and we happened to run into Tom and Rosalie, who were coming back from Japan. We got off the plane, and they're like, oh, hey, we know you. So this is outside of the base, Fire and Fragrance base in Potch, and we're just very, very thankful to all of you who donated money, helped us with different things, prayed for us especially. We felt your prayers, and we are very appreciative of all of that. We couldn't have done it without you, and you were as much part of the trip as we were in some ways, so I'm going to get it.
Oh, I'm going first. Okay, so now we each have 5 minutes to share what are we sharing? What impacted us? Sorry, pregnancy brain. What impacted us the most, and then how we are different coming back. So this could be another 2 hours, so hold on tight, folks. Also, I need my notes. Okay, so I think one of the biggest things that impacted me was just how the Grahams are very special to me. Megan was my mentor when I was in high school and middle school, and I've known Layla since she was born, and they've just had a big part of our lives. And it was really hard sending them off to South Africa 5 years ago. And it was so cool to see what the Lord is doing in them in South Africa. That is their place, and the Lord has totally put them there for a purpose, and they are thriving. And that was just really encouraging to see as we all love them and have deep relationship with them, and just getting to see them and all that the Lord is doing through them and the ways that they're getting to kind of be like the parents of this base. It's a lot of kids our age, or not our age. You guys aren't 20, and I'm not 20, but a lot of young adults. They're just kind of get to be the mom and the dad and disciple these kids, and it's really cool to see them in their natural environment. So that was super impactful for me. And then like I said, we got to do prayer sets every day, so we got to start off our day with worshiping and praying, and that was just, I think that's the biggest thing that I have brought back with me, is when you start your day with Jesus for an hour and a half, so many things that I have struggled with, anxiety and things like that, just kind of aren't there anymore, because you're so filled with Jesus and so filled with his Spirit and his word. And so I think as we come back, that's something that I am including in my life and trying to put into Bible studies, and just other things that I do is spending more time in prayer and worship, and realizing like we are praying for revival this year, and we got to see the beginnings, or probably just revival, in South Africa in really cool ways, and we got to be a part of that. And so just praying for that as we come back, that the Lord would continue to plant those seeds in us. We all got to experience the Lord's Holy Spirit and in new ways. And so I think as we come back and kind of transition back to what life looked like in America, obviously most of us can't spend that much time or go to prayer sets every morning, but just kind of figuring out where we can continue to pray for revival and how the Lord can continue to work in us as we come home. And then I will only share 3 points. I had a lot more. Also, I think when we go on these big trips, we are like, okay, maybe the Lord's going to call us to South Africa. I was a little bit scared that would happen, and I would have to come home and tell Shade, okay, we're moving to South Africa. That didn't happen, don't worry. But I think it was just confirmation that like the Lord has us all in different places for different reasons. He obviously has Scott and Megan and Layla in South Africa, but he obviously has me in Prineville working in a school and about to have a child. Like that is where he has put me, and I'm more confident in that, I think, coming home and just realizing like I can give all the glory to the Lord in this season and in this spot. And Prineville needs revival just as much as South Africa, and Prineville needs Jesus just as much as South Africa, and he has put us all here for that reason, to spread his gospel and give him glory. And so those are some of the big impactful things that I got from this trip. And it was also really special. I didn't think I could say this because I'd probably start crying. But it was really special to go with Hallie and Jane and Emily and Neva and just see the fire that they have for the Lord. Like these girls are on fire for Jesus, and they did so many cool things that were really hard. And yeah, that was really cool. So I'm going to give it to you before I start crying.
Oh, no. So I think what impacted me most would be, I really, really loved the worship and prayer every morning. I just, being in a room full of people that are just in love with Jesus, it just like got my heart beating. I was like, let's go. I was so excited every time, and everyone else was so excited. Just like being in that room, it was really awesome, and it made me appreciate like worship and prayer coming back. The next thing was sharing my testimony. I had never done that before, and it just kind of encouraged me, and I really thought that it wouldn't go very well, but it did, and I was really glad that I did it. I was really scared and nervous, but I loved that. And then another thing was seeing the Grams with all their opportunities and just like they are making the most of what they have, and that really impacted me too. Like I could also be doing that, and I thought it was really cool seeing them just like on fire, and it really motivated me. So yeah. I also love spending time with Emma and everyone else. It was really fun.
I too loved spending time with Emma.
I got so many hugs from Eric, you guys. Never in my life. He is a great hugger on this trip.
I had the same impact as I think everybody here with the prayer and worship. So when we went there the first time, a college girl comes up to me, Afrikaans girl, and says, "I'm so excited you're here for prayer and worship. Aren't you glad to be here for prayer and worship?" And she ran off. And I said, "I guess so." So we went in and had a total refreshing time. And the next day, I was like, "I'm so excited we're here for prayer and worship. Aren't you excited for prayer and worship?" And it was really good. It was refreshing. I also got some really neat shoes that have car tires on the bottom. And this is a popular white farmer Afrikaans dress code here. The food was impressive. Went with no expectations, so any good thing was a nice surprise, and the food was very good. I was impressed with the South Africa. I did not realize that government was aligned with China and Russia and the Middle East. So a South African has a visa that allows them to just walk into countries that other people can't go. And the Christian really views it as a doorway to the nations. So South Africa is a place where many people come and try to get work, and it just allows ministry to go out from there. So the way it's changed me, coming back, I do think that I have always loved God and seek Him. The change would be I like God. I like the Holy Spirit. I like being refreshed. And I want to seek that out. I like it. I want more of that. It's good.
I think I was surprisingly unsurprised at how South African culture was, which is really interesting because we did a very long, not that long, but over the summer we studied a book that was supposed to prepare us for that. But I think I took a human geography class a while ago, and we really got into the feel of being unbiased when we wrote about other countries. And I think that prepared me a bit to be able to go there, and it never really struck me as odd that there was only white people in the town and then native people outside the town, or there was just a lot that wasn't that surprising, but I guess, yeah, it was really interesting, and I'm glad that God was able to prepare my heart in that way, that I could get past that and see people for people. And as the week went on, I saw a lot of great things, and then coming back, that's kind of changed me. I saw a lot of not so great things that have given me a lot of things to pray for, and like everyone else has said so far, the prayer sets, just whenever I think about any of those things, it gives me a time to just do a quick prayer for the names that I met, for the evangelism where we went to the mall, and I caught a couple of their names, and I just think of those people and their faces, and that's a way that's changed me. Another way is being able to see all of the people on the base from Kona or doing the DBS, I just remember one thing specifically where the power had gone out one night, and in the morning there was a little bit of water dripping from one of the fridges, and one of the ladies goes, "Oh my God!" And I'm like, that's not very okay, I mean, for a DBS person. But immediately she goes, it's not in a way that a silly American would say it. She immediately went to prayer, which was really beautiful to see. Oh my God, please don't let this happen. And it wasn't figurative. She just immediately went to prayer, which was really beautiful. And I think I want to keep trying to change my ways to that in anything, maybe not out loud like her, but in everything where as soon as I think something's gone wrong, if I can turn that towards God and ask for help immediately, or if I see something that's gone right, oh God, thank you. I think that's a way that I've changed and want to continue to change.
I think for me, I'm going to say it for the fourth time, prayer sets were really impactful. Seeing just how much they truly depend on prayer and worship kind of made me ask the question, do we depend on prayer and worship? We need to, and we should more. And it was really cool, like Emily was saying, to see a room of people just on fire for the Lord. And it was challenging in ways. It's a very different culture than here. So I definitely kind of hit up against that culture and wrestled with it. But there was also so many good things, and I think the Lord has been, as Pepper said a lot of times on our trip, he's been very gentle with us. I think he's been very gentle with me in teaching me to want more of the Holy Spirit. And I really wrestled with that on the trip. I didn't want the Holy Spirit. I didn't even want to want the Holy Spirit. And coming back and praying more and just being back home and kind of getting back into life, I can now feel that I want more of the Holy Spirit. I want what I saw in South Africa. I want the Lord to work in that way in our church and in our town and with the kids that are at the Rising and with just anybody that we come into contact with. So that's how the Lord impacted me on the trip.
I wrote down what I'm going to say because I didn't want to forget anything. So first, I want to thank you, everybody, for your prayers and financial support, and it was so amazing to see the Grams. That was my first motivation for going there, was to see the Grams, and I had said a long time ago that if there was ever an opportunity to do so, I was going, and I was the first one to sign up. So it was awesome. It was great. Megan was my nurse when I had Lucy, and that was a big event. And so I feel very connected to her and grateful for her. And so that was special. This was my first time out of the country, and I am not a fan of flying. And this trip entailed a ton of flying. So that was something I knew I was going to have to get over, and I did. And actually, I really enjoyed flying. I enjoyed looking out the windows at the lights. I have some pictures of Paris at nighttime, flying over Paris at night. It was really cool. And so I just praise the Lord for that there was no panic attack or anything in the middle of the ocean or over Africa. So that was awesome. There were so many things that impacted me during the trip. The biggest thing, though, was the ability to spend a week with hundreds of other Jesus lovers, starting our days with worship and prayer. So I know you haven't heard anything about that yet. And spending the rest of our day, all day, doing ministry of some sort. It felt very freeing to do that. It was a luxury. And I realize that right now. It was a luxury that I miss dearly. I feel like a spark was fanned, and I was encouraged in ways I didn't ever anticipate, and the worship was rich. Some other things I really enjoyed that I don't get to experience much at home were the delicious coffee shops, the CrossFit workouts, And I just really enjoyed spending time with these people and getting to know all of them better, and meeting so many awesome people over there. I enjoyed, all of the ones that taught us anything. They gave of themselves willingly, and we were taught by some amazing teachers. And so that was an experience. I love to learn, so it was awesome. The probably the most special thing for me was connecting with Hannah. And Hannah is, she's the Graham's roommate who we saw a picture of. And she is creating curriculum and taking it to, right now, they're in the Nuba Mountains in southeastern South Sudan. And she's teaching people how to teach kids, and with a gospel-centered curriculum. And the government is allowing them to do that, allowing her to do that. And it is not an easy place to get to. It takes days to get there. It takes a lot of pain and no comfort at all, not clean water, and not fun sleeping arrangements. So that is what Hannah is doing. And this is what she's following God, and he's leading her to do this. And to me, it's just amazing. It's amazing as a mid-20s woman who, she said her family, she should be married by now and having kids and living on the farm and helping her German family farm trees. And but she's not. She's a missionary, and that is awesome. So I won't forget the people that we met, and I hope that maybe someday we get to see them again. I have a feeling most of them we'll see in heaven, but we'll see a lot of them in heaven. But I don't anticipate seeing a lot of them before then, although it would be a huge blessing to be able to see them, because they were all awesome, and the experience was awesome. The Holy Spirit, like I had never encountered him so richly ever before, and that was amazing. So thank you, all of you, for allowing us to go.
All right. Every time I've tried to explain to someone like what was most impactful and what happened, it's hard for me to narrow it down. So I was like, what part do I even share? Because there's so much. But there's going and praying over the teenagers at the high school was very impactful, and just the group of girls that I ended up walking up to have a lot of the same struggles that I do, and just being able to pray for them and encourage them was really cool. Being at the rehab center and talking to them, like I was talking earlier about, was really cool. I was not looking forward to CrossFit. I was like, I'm still trying to build up strength after having my spinal cord surgery, and my back isn't the greatest, and Scott Graham can be very intimidating, he's gonna make me do all this crazy stuff. Thankfully Scott was very kind and very gentle and very understanding, and I think one of the cool things for me was to see Scott just living it up there, and just the way that I could see. I first met him at my brother's wedding. I didn't think, all these years later I'd be going to South Africa to see these people, just after Layla was born. But so just to see Scott for who he was when he trained me to be a raft guide to who he is now here in South Africa was really, really cool to see, and to be able to have some really good conversations with him. But so CrossFit, I was able to work out, and I was in tears at the end of one workout because I was just so thankful to God. I was overwhelmingly thankful that I am able to move. 2 years ago, I couldn't move. I was always in pain. And the fact that I was down there doing CrossFit workouts, and now me and Kayla are starting to do workouts together, even now is just, I can't be anything but grateful. And then Thursday I was mostly in bed because I was sick. But Friday I went to the hospitals, and that was really impactful as well. And Sarah was with us, and there was a group that came in, a pastor and his wife and 2 other ladies from the congregation. And she was like, I just feel like we should sing this song. And so she started out, and it was kind of a echo back after me song. And it was in Zulu, and it just brought me to tears. Like, hearing it was so beautiful in the life, and you could just feel God's presence in the room, and just being able to pray for those people was really hard, but also really cool. Myself and Neva got to pray over some NICU babies and their mothers and some nurses there. Also, the Anglican Church, I didn't explain much of what it was, but we had like 3 different books, and they had all the numbers, but we got confused sometimes of which book we're supposed to be reading out of, and there's a hymn, but then there's the prayers. But it was, I was just like in a space where it was really impactful. Usually when the music is offbeat and the organ isn't playing it quite right, I'm just very distracted by that. But it was just like, I was so concentrated on what like we were singing, and just the words that we were reading, and just such a depth to it, and such a depth to what the preacher was speaking about that day. And it was just really impactful. I wish I would have written down more, but we went on a plane later, and I didn't get around to it. But probably, and I could explain a lot more about all those different things, but the most impactful thing happened during a debrief. So we had all these debrief every night, even one after the ministry night that went to like 10 p.m. We were going to bed much earlier than that. But we had Gabe, the guy who's in charge of Fire and Fragrance, come over, and he was just talking us through some different things there, and wanting to just kind of hang out with us while we were there. And I had met him previously when he came here, like before they went to South Africa first, to talk about like what their vision was and stuff. So it was really cool to go there, and from him explaining the vision that they had to then going and seeing how it has all come to fruition was really cool and impactful. But he was talking, we were going along, and he has 2 little kids. He's like, oh, we gotta go. The kids are getting restless, right? Well, he starts praying, and then he has prayed something along the lines of like, if anyone is holding on to like shame or things that they don't need to be holding on to any longer, like may they be broken free of that. And I happened to be sitting on the couch next to him, and I was like, oh no. And I'm like falling off the couch, and I'm crying. And I was like, here we go. I don't really like crying in front of people. I don't mind it as much as I used to, but I'm just like, oh gosh, here's all these people looking at me. And so I was just like, I just really felt like the Lord was speaking to me in that. And while he was praying, I was just like, Holy Spirit, come down and just change my life. And that was in the song. And then he was like, I won't go into all the details because it'll take a while, but he was asking some different people. And so there was more prayer, and just that night I felt freedom. So there is, even that morning, there's a lady talking, and she was like praying about how she had been in this ministry where people were being healed and people were being set free from their mental health issues and all this stuff. Meanwhile, she was having the worst year of her life that she was there, and she was having all these mental health issues and stuff. And she was like so confused about why God wasn't healing her and why she was still struggling. And I was like, relatable, right? I've had chronic pain and mental issues for a long time. And that night, I just felt like between that night and the next night, there's verses spoken, and God was just really working through Mike and Emily and Jane and Eric in there for a long time. I'm going really long, I'm sorry. But just the way that God worked, showed things in different people's hearts. And Pepper prayed for me, all these people, just to come around together as a team and to feel so loved and mostly loved by God, just very sweet and very like, God is with me here. And I was the last one to sign up for this trip. I was like, okay, I'll do the finances, and I think I'll go, but there's only 12 people that can go, and so if it fills up, I won't go. And then Mike says, oh, we could probably take 13, and I was like, oh, no. So after talking with my dad and a close friend, I was like, I can't say no. And all other trips I've been like, oh, something fun, or like have really wanted to go. This one I felt like God was like, no, I want you to go. Like, I was like, that's so far. Grams are cool. They've been here. Like, I see them then. I don't really care to go to South Africa. Here we are. So I went, and I just feel like God lifted so much weight off of me. There's more things that I won't go into detail about, but just so much of my depression and anxiety was just lifted off of me Friday and Saturday. And on the way to the airport, somehow I got in the passenger seat with Scott. And I don't know how that happened because I'm like the last person to sit and talk with Scott. There's so many other people that were so excited to talk to him. I'm like, oh, I'll talk to Megan, but Scott and I have had back and forth over time, so. But I do love Scott, and I really respect and appreciate him. And along the way, I was just talking about, he was asking me what mostly impacted me. And as I was talking to him about, well, like, I feel like God has lifted me up. I feel like he's really lightened a lot of this stuff that I've been struggling with. But we'll see when we get back, because I always feel better when I'm out and about. And once I get back to real life, I'm like, well, that was just the trip. I was just excited to be somewhere else. And he said to me, don't take back what God has already healed. And I was like, So that's something I've definitely have stuck on to, of just like, he healed me. I don't need to take that back. He has put a new thing in my life. And just... gosh, I'll probably shut up. There's so many more things, but just the way I like pray and the way that I view God, and my outlook has completely changed. And I would love to talk to you more about it. So hit me up sometime.
Thank you, Alicia. That was really good. What impacted me about the trip, if you hadn't heard it enough, you'll hear it one more time, is prayer and worship. I kind of struggle with worship just because a lot of times when I'm playing, I'm too focused on the music and I'm distracted, right? And I feel like I'm just singing the words, not really feeling anything. And I think that was a really special moment to really see how the Holy Spirit is really in the room when you are worshiping him. And it was really special to hear from the leaders of the worship team, and just finding joy in worshiping God and not just singing the words. And for the prayer, sometimes I start focusing too much on what I'm going to pray about or the words I'm going to say so then I don't mess up. And I guess it really impacted me on just really talking to God and pouring out my soul, kind of like how Hannah did at the altar when she was barren and people thought she was drunk when she was praying. I was like, wow, but imagine if we all prayed like that. But like really just pouring out your soul when you're praying. And how am I different now? I've been trying to incorporate just weekly alone times with God, and to really try to invite the Holy Spirit and deepen my relationship with God. And it's been really encouraging to see everybody on this trip be impacted, and everybody that is there really be on fire for God. And I think it'll also impact me on being evangelistic. Sorry, I don't know why I always struggle with that word. But and just being really brave to go and talk to people about God, because God is a big part of, it should be a big part of your life. And if it is a big part of your life, you should be telling other people about him. So
I'll try to make it short. I'm compelled to say a few things. So it had different impacts, and it still is impacting me now. And I'll tell you, there's a theme going on with God and I right now. But I wanted to first start out by saying I was fascinated by the geography of South Africa. I did not realize that when we landed in Johannesburg, it was 5,700 feet. If you guys know what that means, that's well above most of the passes that go over the Cascades. It's dry, fairly arid. I say this because Potchefstroom was not that much lower in elevation. I think we were still right around 4,800 feet. But the mornings were cool. I'm going to skip ahead. The mornings were cool. I love the mornings, the birds. It was spring there, although it was still dry and hot. We were getting 90-degree days, but the mornings were 45, 50 degrees, and it was really nice. I like to get up early in the morning. And I want to say this specifically because I know Scott and Megan and Layla will be watching this at some point. But as I would get up early, I would go find coffee, Tom. I would go find coffee, and I would run into the earliest risers of Fire and Fragrance and YWAM Kona, and all the kids that were on the base. Very much reminded me of Bible school years. And got to talking with them. They're like, well, why are you guys here? We're like, we're here for 10 to 11 days, just checking up on our missionaries, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Jokingly, I was saying this. But really, I did want to go and find out what Scott and Megan and Layla were doing, and fascinated every day by what was going on. And I want to shout out to Scott right now. I know that he is double timing it in ministry these days, and he was triple timing it, taking care of us there. I mean, I saw that clearly, and all the Grahams, not just Scott, but I mean, he's got the workouts going on, that ministry, and taking care of multiple other things with Fire and Fragrance, and it was not lost on me how much that guy was doing. I've known Scott since he was a teenager, and very impressed with stretching your missionary dollar for all it's worth with Scott and Megan and Layla. To completely change up, though, back to the theme that God is working in me, before I left, I have been impacted as I pass the homeless in Redmond and Bend and here. I've seen now for the last 20 years or more a little bit of underbelly and the first world, third world theme. Now we see that in South Africa in a amazingly ugly way with the apartheid and the aftermath thereof, which is, I would assume, fairly close to what it used to be still. But I am struck by our position right now as a church, as a Central Oregon greater church, and the homeless population we have here, that first world, third world, reaching out to less fortunate, doing what you would for, I mean, as Jesus said, what you've done to these, the least of these, you've done unto me. I have recently been working on the Lighthouse. I don't know if you guys know much about that. I've been working on some of the HVAC in the Lighthouse. It's part of Bethlehem Inn. It's a homeless shelter on 2nd over by Weimar in Bend. lots of homeless people there. And I drive by Redmond Airport like the rest of us do, and knowing what is third world just north of Highway 126 as compared to first world Redmond, it just is happening. My wife works with the kids that come from what they call dirt world out there. She works with the kids that are needy in the Redmond School District, among others. But yeah, we have opportunity, and it is gnawing at me to do something about this. And I still don't know what I'm going to do about it, but it is a theme. God is doing it, and I am looking to obey. If this resonates with anyone else, let me know.
You didn't like the prayer and worship, though?
I don't have the time.
Okay. Just two quick things. The first is that this was an amazing team to spend 12 days with. And I loved every minute of it and every one of them, and getting to know you all better than I did before, and especially our young people. So, like, God was the star of the show, but right in second place underneath them was the 6 teenagers that we took. Getting to watch them obey, like, without any hesitation or question or complaining, whining, or anything. Like, if anything, the adults were the whiners. And if we didn't have our coffee on time, and these young people were amazing. So for me, that was a big theme of the trip the ministry we were with was Youth with a Mission. And here we had 6 youth on mission. And I guess as a pastor, I want to sit down and just cheer them on and watch them run into the future. And we're going to have to hand off the faith and the church to them. And this was the beginning of that for you guys. So it's really cool to be like in the baton pass. And I don't feel that old, but we're already passing the baton off to them. So I'm really excited what God's going to do with them. And then the second thing that I'll share just real quickly is that God's timing is impeccable. And the week that we were there, and I could tell you about this in person, but the week that we were there was weird and out of the ordinary for Fire and Fragrance. And things were happening that for the first part of the week sent us all kind of spinning about, we're not charismatics. We don't have a charismatic church. We've never experienced a lot of that. And this stuff's going on. We're going like, what is happening? And then right in the middle of the week, it was like this code shift kind of thing. Like things just clicked for us as a team. And then I got to be involved in some conversations and some meetings that God just showed me some things. And the rest of the week was really, I think, observing what God was trying to teach us the very specific time that we were there. And that stuff is continuing on in my heart and my own leadership, and I think it's continuing on in each of these people as well, and I'm excited to see where that goes. So again, I would encourage you, this would be the third thing I say, if you want to learn more, we all love coffee, so you can take us out to coffee or invite us over for something, and we'd love to share more of the stories of what God did, but we want to keep it brief in that. So it's 7:45, but I do want to, if you guys have any questions, we want to just hear those and answer them as best as we can. So anybody have any questions? Andrew. Great question. So Andrew's asking what a prayer set is. Are there specific themes? How are those run? Do you want to talk about that, Emma, or you want me to explain it?
Yeah, I was supposed to talk about this, but then I was the first one to talk, so I got nervous. So they kind of did each day differently. There was somebody who ran the prayer set. So like one day, for example, Emily would be leading the prayer set. So she would get up and say, today we're going to pray rumble style is what they would call it. So like everybody's praying at once out loud. So it's not quiet. Everybody's praying. It's filling the room. And you're praying for something that they put on the screen. So one day they put like, for example, like pray for the kids that come to the Rising. So we're all praying at once for kids that come to the Rising. And then they would do that for like 5 minutes, and then they would change the topic a little bit. So it might be like, okay, now pray for the homeless that come to the Rising. So we're all kind of on one topic each day. A lot of them, like I said earlier, were like Bible translation or Bible, what's it called when you give Bibles to be distribution? Or like it was kind of that theme one of the days, and then another one of the days was like praying specifically for South Africa. So they would change like pray for South African government officials, pray for freedom in South Africa. So they kind of all had a theme each day, and somebody different was leading it each day. And then there's like rumble style prayer, so we pray all at once out loud. And then there was sometimes you'd get into a group of like 3 people. So one day I got to pray with 2 South African girls who I didn't know. I mean, you're kind of surrounded by strangers and you're praying with different people that you don't know. So we prayed for 5 minutes at a time over the topics they would put on the screen. And then, was there any other style of prayer we did? Yeah, and then they would like turn some of the prayers into songs. So we would pray, and then they would have immediately turned up the prayer into a song, and it was on the screen. And we would like sing it for a while. And then the music would kind of die down, but it was still playing in the background, and then they would change the topic. We'd pray about that for a few minutes in our groups or rumble style, and then we would pray about whatever they put, or sing whatever they put on the screen. And so it was very like worship and prayer were one thing, which was really cool. When we do it here, it's like they're different, separate things, but we were getting to like pray through song and pray together and pray by ourselves, and you kind of got to experience every way of prayer and new ways of prayer. But was there others other than Rumble and groups? I think it was just that.
For Africa as a whole, and we had they had different like regions, and so then so like I remember I was in a group praying for West Africa, and so which was cool because we have a missionary in West Africa, and so anyway, that was fun to like just pray for the whole country, but different groups were praying for different parts of that. But yeah, the prayer sets were really awesome.
And the Grahams also just sent us a video of them praying for the election of America. So they care a lot about who our president is, and I thought it was pretty cool because it's all the way in South Africa.
Can we play that video?
Any other questions? Thanks, Emily. Mark. So is the high school public or private? Yes is the answer? Yes. So Mark's asking, is it public or private, and is there ongoing ministry going on at the high school?
So this high school that we went to is public, but they do have private high schools there as well. And this was, there's co-ed. Some of the schools in Potch are girls only, guys only. There is an ongoing ministry at that high school and many of the other high schools in Potch. And she said the first one that they had quite a lot of people in there. It's during their break, which is when they have lunch and everything. So they came during their lunchtime to hear our testimonies and stuff. Willingly came, yeah. So they didn't. So that was like their time. And then one of the things we were praying in prayer set is they were getting ready for a big evangelism the next week, and they were able to tell the gospel to almost every high school in every classroom. So
And every government building.
and yeah, every government building. But yeah, so the high schools have different ministries going on. I don't remember if they have middle school ministries or not, but I think mostly high schools. So.
Fire and Fragrance staff have worked hard to build relationships with the schools and the hospitals and that rehab center, and that has taken time, like 2 years, and has really been good. So they've got open doors in those areas.
Any other questions? Going once, twice. Anything else you want to share? All right. Well, thank you for supporting us. For those who supported, thank you for praying. Thanks for coming out tonight and listening. yeah, and like I said, come and talk to us. We'd love to share more. There's just too much to share in a couple hours that we have. But maybe Pepper, if you'd pray us out of here.
Father, thank you for this evening, and thank you for those that are curious and have been in support of us, have been in support of Scott and Megan and Layla. I just ask that you would send us home from here, contemplating the things that you would have us contemplate, and wake us up in the morning ready to do something about them. I just ask that you give us safe travels home now. In Jesus' name, amen.
That concludes our service.